Join the team.
Hey team, this is theMCGuiRE Review, and today we're going to take a look at 3 titles from Facade Games. This is not really going to be a review video, but more of kind of a spotlight or an overview on this particular publisher and what kind of games and the style of their games they have, which from a product design perspective, I think is fairly unique. You can get these games in your local game store. You can also find these games. I've seen them in Barnes and Nobles. So they definitely had some success from that perspective. One of the things I'll just start with, and we'll get into each one of these. I'll talk about each one of these lightly just so you get a feel for what these 3 titles are. They do have more than just these 3. They definitely have a 4th one, and I believe they might be working on a 5th one. I don't know. I'm not sure about that 100%, but they do have more than the 3 that I have here. These are just the 3 that were sent to me to see what I thought about it from a channel perspective. And I will share that as well here in the video. But again, this isn't a review video technically for each one of these, but there are some review type aspects that I will share here in the video. Okay, so the first thing from a product design perspective, these are awesome, right? Like you can see there, it sort of just looks like books, like nicely designed books that you could just put into a bookshelf. And you might not even be able to tell from a distance that these were board games and not books. So I love the design of the boxes. They are very high quality, and they're each identical from that perspective. The only difference is when you do open them up, and they do have a magnetic closure, which is cool. The Tortuga and Salem just have the white cover in here, where Deadwood actually put some artwork there on the inside and the cover. So this one got a little bit nicer from a components perspective, which I think is pretty cool. And they also did a little bit more scripting, a little bit more work on the outside of this cover to make it look more like a book, where these are just more kind of your standard or leather-bound kind of looking books. Another thing that's nice is they each follow something from historical basis. So although they are games, they are based on realistic things. They are based on historical either events or time periods. So Deadwood, 1876, Salem, 1692, the Salem witch trials, and Tortuga, 1667. So that's kind of cool as well if you're somebody that likes to get games that are based on real historical things. You might like these titles. Each one of them are completely different in nature as well. And I wouldn't say they're made up of themes that are like brand new innovative things. Each one of these, you probably already have board games that are within these themes. But we'll start here with Deadwood. So Deadwood is like your Western theme style game. It's going to have, and they all follow this same suit. They have a very small, rule book. It's pretty quick little rule set to read through. I would say Tortuga is probably the most advanced out of these 3 titles. And another thing that's really good about these games is that they offer a high player count, which you don't get a lot in a lot of games nowadays. Deadwood offers up to 9 players. This one does start at 2. Tortuga, I believe, goes up to 9 players as well, 2 to 9. Salem here goes all the way up to 12 players. This one's got 12 players that it'll support, and we'll talk about why that makes sense here when we go through Salem. But they all kind of are going to follow that same format, where they're going to get a little bag of some various bits. Generally, they're all wooden type bits. This one's got some dice and some badges. This one's got a nice little bag that's included. You've got 3 of these little, and these are little wooden engraved tokens. They're little locations within the game. You've got the Grand Central Saloon and the theater, and we're not going to get too much into the review or the gameplay. And then you've got a nice deck of cards, which is going to be all your cards you're going to use for this game. Deadwood is essentially going to be your classic Western shooter, where you're going to be stealing safes, you're going to be getting put into teams over the course of the game, and then you're going to be collecting things that are in those safes, and then having a final showdown and shootout at the very end of the game for a final winner. So that's how a lot of these games are designed. You either start in teams or you're kind of in teams and you form teams. Maybe you do some social deduction and you get out of those teams and backstab people. They all have that kind of feel to them. They're also all playable within 20 to 40 minutes, which is another nice thing about these style games. Small form factor, they support a high number of people, and they're playable within about that 30-minute range. I find most games are about 30 minutes. So that works out really well for like quick games over lunch or larger groups or work events or travel or whatever. That works out really well from that design perspective. That's Deadwood, okay? Tortuga is going to be kind of your pirate-themed type. You've got the Jolly Roger and the Flying Dutchman, the Spanish Armada. You're going to get a really cool little neoprene mat for this one that's got some ship layouts on it and like a little map and everything, like if you'd be in the water. You're going to get that. You're going to get another little pack of cards you're going to need over the course of the game to vote on things. This one, you play a number of different. Here's your kind of your bag of wooden bits and your little baggie here. You're going to play. You're either going to be on one of these two ships, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's your team. That can change over the course of the game. You're going to take different roles, being captains and boat boys, and you can get stuck on the island of Tortuga. There's a number of different things that you can do. And you'll move around the ship. You'll play different roles. Those different roles do different things. You'll be voting on, sending a captain off to an island. You'll be voting on things over the course of the game as well. So this one does have by far the most complexity out of all three of the titles. It still has a very short rule book, but it definitely has the most complexity out of the three titles. You might like this game. You might not. Because there is a lot of social sort of decisions and voting and conversation that happens. That's not a style for everybody, but if your group likes that, you probably will really like Tortuga. Okay, so that's Tortuga. And the last one we've got here is Salem. This is essentially a more deluxe version of like a werewolf style game. That's what you're looking at here. You are going to do the whole thing where you take, there's some people that are witches, there's some people that are townspeople, there's another role that can kind of moderate the game, and you can do that two different ways. You can either step completely out of the game and fully moderate for 12 people. The whole like close your eyes and say who you are, open your eyes, raise your hand. It's all that kind of stuff. But there's more mechanics that happen in this where you're like sort of sliding and giving cards to different people, and the witches are doing things amongst when the eyes are closed. And you're supposed to kind of like make some noise so you don't hear people rustling around or trading cards or whatever. And it does play out where, the witches either win if everybody becomes a witch, or the townspeople win if they root out all the witches. So that's kind of cool. That's what you're going to get in Salem. It really is just that style of game. But again, it's based on historical accuracy for the most part of things that actually really kind of happened. And you get a little bit more mechanic and a little bit more nicer components than you would in like a standard style like werewolf type game. Okay, so you get 2 decks of those cards, and they're all branded. They always look the same there. And then you also get a little timer, which you will use over the course of the game. Nice little black sand timer. And then you get this little gavel piece that you'll use as well when you play the game. Okay, so that's Salem. That's what you're going to get in this title. So now you can kind of get a feel for how all 3 of these titles, they do follow a very similar product design and approach. Okay, and some would say maybe, well, why don't you make something else other than like these things over and over and over again? Okay, I also think that this is actually a pretty smart way to design these games, because they can continue to keep making game after game after game after game. It's almost infinitely, because the games are so small and focused from a mechanics perspective that it's like, this is what the game is. It's never going to be more complex than this little box right here, right? Like it's very focused. Like I want to play that werewolf style game. And I'm going to say that because there's a lot of different games that are like the werewolf style games. I really want to play that game, so I'm going to pull this one out. I really want to play just a super simple little shoot 'em up, and whoever's the winner and steal the safes game. Okay, I'm going to play Deadwood. I want to feel like an outlaw for 30 minutes. You want to go and play a kind of a pirate-themed style type game. Okay, well, then you might want to play Tortuga. They're very focused from that perspective. Also, as they build these games out, and if you've got them all, you're going to end up having sort of this bookshelf of all these board games, and they just fit nicely. They're very small form factor, and they look good. Okay, so that's what you're going to get from this publisher in this style game. Again, these may be for you, maybe they're not. I'll be honest and just tell you that out of these three, I probably am going to play this game the most because it supports the most people. It's the most straightforward. It's just kind of something that anybody can sit down and play and get into, and it's a really easy one. I probably will play... I don't know. I don't know which one I would say I would play the least or the most out of these two. This one's kind of fun... from the perspective of how it kind of comes down to that final shootout. But this may not be a great theme for everybody, right? And you can kind of see why. But, this one's definitely based on, like, guns and shooting and winning and all of that. So this may not be a theme that's for everybody. Just depends on the group that you're playing it with. This one here, again, I kind of said when we went over it, it definitely can be fun. But there's a lot of the voting and conversation and making decisions in this one. So, I think it's based on the group, if that's something they're really going to want to do. If you have a high role-play group, if you have a group that likes a lot of role-playing games and role-play stuff, they're probably going to like Tortuga a lot. If you have a group that's very, like, Euro gaming style, might not like Tortuga too much, right? Like... because there's just too much of the, like, well, this only happened because you agreed that this should happen, not because that would have been the best thing. I don't know. I digress. Just things to keep in mind. And they do come at a fairly low price point. All right, team, so that's Facade. And if you see these games and you pick one up, and then you watch this video or you want to come back to this video, let me know what you thought in the comments below, and we can have further conversation on it. With that, team, keep rolling them crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.